sweet songs and sting bugs. My father, my younger brother Nate, and I sat on the hallway floor outside the one bathroom in our house. You might think we were waiting to use the bathroom, but that was not so. We were listening to my mother sing. She likes to sing through the bathroom when she takes a shower. My father tiled the entire room. In fact, the tiles bounce her voice around so she can hear herself. In the attic, I found large posters of my mother all dressed up in taff, taffeta or silk, singing in great halls, fancy chandeliers above her. Her name, Melinda May, was written in large, important letters. Now my father calls her Min, and she sings to the animals and in the tiled bathroom of our famous farmhouse. When she sings in the shower, we come to hear her. Nate hears my whistle and hurries in from the barn. My father comes in from the fields. Once he left his horse Jack by the back door, and he later found Jack in the kitchen. We heard the slap of the screen door and the bit. Our herding dog came down the hallway to lie down next to my father. The hole is safe. Beth has come to be with her pack and listen, said my father softly. My father sat his cowboy hat on the floor next to him, his head leaning against the wall. His eyes were closed. My mother's voice sounded lovely and clear like newly washed glass. Unveiled day, my father said softly, a fine day. My mother may not know all things about Johnny Cash, but my father had studied Puccini, who wrote the song my mother sings. My father knows all of mother's songs and who wrote them. Puccini, Bizet, Mozart, and Donizetti. My brother Nate pointed to a stink bug crawling down the wall. There is something about my 80-year-old brother Nate, a sort of slave sweetness. When he pointed out the strangely homely with the beautiful, lovely, whispered Nate with a grin. My father grew wide was remember, said Nate understands the connection of opposites, the sleek, shapely body of the Borg and his best male. Summer vacation soon, said Nate. I turned my head to look at Nate. Do you ever want something exciting to do away from the farm in the summer to see amazing things? Nate shook his head. I'm happy here, he whispered. I'm amazing here and exciting. I needed something new. I said something more interesting than cows and goats and chickens. Chickens are very, very interesting. And Nate Miller even likes to sit on my lap. Buddy plays tag with me. I needed something different, I said. It will happen, said Nate. It will. I smiled because Nate sometimes sounds like a wise old man. My mother finished her area on a high, long note. She turned off the shower. My father quickly got up. He didn't want my mother to be shy about us like listening when she sang in the shower. Nate hurried off, but trot, trot, trotted after them. All that was left behind was my father's handkerchief and the stink bug crawling back up the wall again. Direction hanged. My mother came out of the shower and bent down to pick up the handkerchief she knew. My mother knew everything, almost everything. I wondered why she's happy singing in the shower instead of wearing a big silk dress and singing for a huge audience who, when she's finished, leap to their feet and applaud. And someone gives her a huge bunch of flowers on stage as the velvet curtain falls. Today I found a letter left open on the kitchen table for me to read. It was from James Grayson, a famous tenor, to my mother. Melinda, I will be singing a concert close to you. Please come. Maybe we can sing together again. I will send you a ticket, James. I turned the letter over as if hiding it from myself. I remembered the large fancy poster with a picture of my mother and James looking happy and famous. How could she have that behind to live on a farm in the middle of the prairie? It is hard to believe that loving my father is enough. It is hard to believe that Nate and I are enough. 2. A perfect day. I didn't like the last day of fourth grade. I loved the fourth grade mostly because I love my teacher, Mrs. Rudolph. Mrs. Rudolph loves me too, which helps. I will miss her when I go to fifth grade. She knows I can write. She wrote back to me on my storage. She asked the questions. Really? She writes with disbelief. Love this. Oh. I don't understand this sentence. What do you really mean? She is always right. Spelling is more important than you think. She was all told the class. She sighed. I knew she was thinking about her husband, Sheriff Rudolph, who can spell. He writes Rudolph log in the newspaper every day, all about town events. He's a very smart man who learned English when he was older, she said, but he can't spell. We know that by reading the log. Teddy Dunn's goats ran whirled around town. Mrs. Pheasant fell down in her nightgown. Miracle will not let Mary Willie in her house. Jake Willie couldn't stop laughing and had to be taken to the hospital. Just this week, he wrote Billy Reams. Bulls got out and ran down the road. We were afraid they might become violent. Violent? I knew the sheriff meant violent. I like his looks because they are puzzles waiting to be solved. I told Mrs. Rudolph this. She stared at me for a long time. I hope you keep writing all summer while school is out. She said, I don't know if I can. I said, I'll work better with assignments. I like to see the things I'll write about. Sometimes Mrs. Rudolph says to write about light, why I'm crying, what a shelter dog wishes for your favorite time of day or night, what your cat dog does at night while you sleep. And the morning after, we listen to my mother sing unbelty in the shower. After we watched her sing to the cows in the meadow, and they ran into the milked. After she tried as always to charm the goats by singing, and they bleated her away. There was a knock at our door. It was Mrs. Rudolph with Sheriff Rudolph. Come in, Rudolph. Come in, Ella, said my father. I didn't know Sheriff Rudolph's name was Rudolph. It made me smile. And I never knew Mrs. Rudolph was Ella. I guess most of us in fourth grade thought of her first name as Mrs. They came in and sat down at the kitchen table. My mother was out singing a lullaby to the pigs. We could hear her sweet voice through the door. Her singing always caused the pigs to stop and stare, frozen in place so she could shove out their pins. Cano non, Rigolito, said my father. It means a sweet name. Sheriff Rudolph gestured to the page of the newspaper. What mistake did make today? He asked. Only a small one, I told him kindly, because I could see he was worried. You wrote two kids with an IES instead of two kids with an EYS. Not too bad. Sheriff Rudolph smiled at me. We came to give Sylvia two pieces of news, said Mrs. Rudolph. Good news, I hope. For me, I said. Nate sat down at the table. Mrs. Rudolph nodded. I'll tell her, Ella, said Sheriff Rudolph. I may not be able to spell, but I can talk. My wife has a summer assignment for you. She does? What? Me, said Sheriff Rudolph. He took a piece of paper out of his pocket. This is a contract. I'd like to hire you to write Rudolph's log this summer. Your assignment, said Mrs. Rudolph happily. I read the contract. You are going to pay me for writing? Yes, sir. You will cover the town like a reporter. You can ride your horse sometimes or ride with me, maybe once or twice with my duty ruler. We'll give you a cell phone so we can report in events when we see them. My own cell phone. I'd like to ride with her the first day, said father. We don't get to ride horses together very often. Suddenly, I felt like crying. My father put his large hand over mine. He knew I was a little afraid. He knew. That's just fine, Jack, said Sheriff Rudolph. You know the old town rules. And fields and rivers, said Mrs. Rudolph. She knew I was nervous. The sheriff handed me a pen from his pocket. Do you agree? He asked. I agree. I signed my name. You will see amazing things, Sylvia, said Nate. Just like I said. Thank you, Sylvia, said the sheriff. Ella says you are a great writer and you can write the long any way you want, and people will stop laughing at me. They call my log Rudolph's loony log. Could I write poetry? I asked. You can write whatever you want. Do it your way. Maybe we can call it Sylvia's summer log. All right then. Mrs. Rudolph smiled, and the sheriff was known for his well, all right then comment. The sheriff stood up and he and Mrs. Rudolph walked to the door. Suddenly, Mrs. Rudolph turned. Do you want to hear the second piece of good news? I nodded. I'll be your teacher in fifth grade. I get to follow my favorite students. Yay! I'd said it to myself, but I'd said it out loud. Yay! Echoed Mrs. Rudolph. I hope I can do this, I said. You can said Mrs. Rudolph. Remember what you wrote in class, just dance. When they opened the door, I had a summer job as a writer. I had my own cell phone. I had my favorite teacher next year, and my mother was singing music from La Traviata for our small herd of sheep to their loud buzz back at her. A perfect day, I repeated to my mother when she came up to say goodnight. I know, she said, perfect like mine. I get to sing every day. You will get to write every day. She had a page in her hand with a man's picture. I reached out for it. What is this? James Grayson. He sent it to us so we could go hear him. I saw a poster of you singing with him. I saw it in the attic. You were both dressed up. My mother laughed. We did dress up in those days. She kissed me and went off to the hot shower. My mother is wrong. It's not the same at all. She could sing on stage with James Grayson if it weren't for us, and James was coming. She could have fame. She could have excitement. I'd write about the town, the cows and horses and sheep that run loose. No surprises, no excitement. The shower went on, and I knew Ned and my father, gone to bed early, would listen from their beds. I will hear her too. I don't understand my mother, but I will listen to her song from my bed. Costa Diva, slow and sad. My mother's favorite evening shower area, and the James she sang with coming, where she wanted to sing stay on stage. Away from us, I listen, and then I sleep. 3. Jack and Jack. Early before my mother and Nate were out of bed, my father and I saddled up our horses in the morning dark. I rode my Molly with the white blades. My father's horse was named Jack, like my father. Sometimes the people in the town would Jack, here comes Jackson Jack, as if together they made one name, Jack and Jack. That was his name when I bought him. My father once explained the only name he'd answer to. We rode up the dirt road toward town, Beth trotting, trotting along beside us. She will turn back when we get to the end of the sheep meadow, said my father. Her job is the sheep, and she likes it. Beth stopped at the sheep fence and watched us go off. Then she jumped through the fence to join the sheep. A line of light appeared on horizon as we rode. Dan. My father patted Jack and began to sing softly. You are my burden, my pal, my friend. It'll be that way until the end. And wherever you go, I want you to know you are my buddy, a pal, my friend. Willie Nelson, he said to me. I know. His voice was strong and familiar. Sometimes my father sang to me at night when I was little. A different voice than my mother. You should sing with mother sometime, I said to him as the sun came up and the prairie was filled with light. We do, he said. You do? When? I was surprised and he smiled. At night after you are in bed. You do? Really? Really. You should hear your mother sing Willie Nelson. She sings Willie Nelson? My father nodded. And Johnny Cash, Roy Orbison too. Sometimes Katie Lang. I stared at him, thinking for the first time about my mother and father's life together without Nate and without me. Look, said my father, pointing to Elmer Beach cornfield. Elmer had put one scarecrow out to keep away the crowds, but now the field was filled with crowds. It seemed like 100 crowds or more, and Elmer was putting up 2 more scarecrows, fancy ones, One had a bright red jacket that I had seen Elmer wear. The other wore a fancy hat that Elmer's wife, Bella, wore on Sundays. It had a long ribbon that blew in the morning breeze. I waved at Elmer and took out my notebook. This will help with a present from me to you, said my father. He handed me a book on acceleration of logs. I opened it and found the names of groups of birds, finches, and squirrels, and crows. I never knew what a group of crows was called, I said. I slid down off Molly and gave the reins to my father, and I rode. My father and I rode home in the warm afternoon sun. We had dropped off my log of events to the sheriff's office. It was quite, quite a list. Quite a list, said my father. One small lost dog and a crying little girl looking for a small lost dog, a horse on his own on the road, a boy falling off his bike. The parents called on my cell phone. I added, don't forget Maudie's flock of chicken running through town. I said, lured home by a trail of grain, said my father. That was smart of you to carry it. We rode past Elma beans, scarecrows, colorful in the cornfield. Elma had added bright spinning surprises on top of their heads. Only a few crows at the edge of the field, said my father. But they'll be back. Crows are very smart and they have a strong emotional connections with each other. They can recognize a face and they can hatch plots. What kind of plots? I asked. Crow plots, said my father. How do you know that? I asked. I've read about them. I'll tell you all I knew. We turned the corner by our ship. Meadows and Bat came running to meet us. At the barn, we took off the saddles and washed the horses and wiped them down. We gave them water and grain and opened the fences so they could go roll in the grasses of the field. We walked into the kitchen. My father filled 2 glasses of cold water. He handed me one. Want to hear about the secret lives of crows? He asked. My mother walked into the kitchen, smiling at us. How was your day? She asked. It was great, I said. I'm about to tell Sylvia all about the secret lives of crows, said my father. My mother smiled at my father. Your father is fascinated by the secret lives of crows and the sheep, cows, and birds of the field, and he's right. They all have secret lives of their own. One of the reasons I love living here. I took a deep breath. But don't you miss singing on stage? I asked. My mother stared at me for a moment. Only once in a while, she said, but I'd miss you all the time if I went away to perform. Will you be glad to see James? Of course, but he was my past. This is my present and the future, said my father. I wanted to say, but it is not exciting and glamorous. And we are just here on the farm, but I couldn't say anything. Can I do anything? Can I do anything for you before you hear about carousel? She asked. Yes, I said certainly. You could sing a Willie Nelson song for me. My mother grinned. He told you, she said. I nodded. He knows all about your music. I just didn't know you knew about it. He said. But I do, she said, and she did. She sang, I've lived you all over the world with my father, and then they sang Johnny Cash. The two of them singing to each other like people falling in love in our kitchen. My mother's voice was different. It matched my father's, and they danced, just danced, like the day they met in the dinner in Carine. I didn't learn about crowds until later. Not invited a murder of crowd, slick, eating the bean field. Come see the scarecrows, Elma in scarlet, Bella in her Sunday hat, whirling wings on their heads, amusing the cows as they keep on eating and eating and eating. Sylvia Bloom. Many trails of Millie Tinder's tears, leading her to her lost best friend Robbie. Furry, one black ear and one white, licking Millie's tears away. Sylvia Bloom. A trail of grain, followed by mothers, reckless, running chickens, beaks on the ground, until they are happily home again. Sylvia Bloom. 4. Great joy. Sheriff Rudolph came into the kitchen the next morning without knocking. He had a huge smile and handed me the morning newspaper. You are a great success, Sylvia, he said loudly. Here's your log. He stopped suddenly to listen. The door opened. What's the mean singing? She sounds different, nice but different. My mother did sound different. Her voice was smooth and strong. She's a mystery to me. She's a mystery girl. I taught her that song. The sheep love it. When Min sings Ray Obson, my father said, we were quiet in the kitchen. Sheriff Rudolph sat down at the kitchen table. There were no sheep baths as there were usually. She was still singing her own angel songs, wasn't she? Asked Sheriff Rudolph wistfully. My father smiled at Angela's songs. She's just enlarging her world a bit. I guess the truth of it is that Min can sing anything. Sheriff Rudolph said. Everyone is leading your own and calling me. Sylvia, and there must be 2 dozen people at Beans cornfield, all looking at the Elena and Bella scarecrows. They came from all over town when they read your invitation. So many people, the crowds went somewhere else. They'll be back, said my father with a sly look. The sheriff smiled. He beckoned to me. All right, then, our first day today in my car, he said. Sheriff Rudolph and I walked out to his old black and white car with the sheriff stuck on the driver's side, the black letters. The second F was gone. He noticed my leg. The last half fell off long ago. Not my fault. I stored it somewhere, he said. Beside us on the front seat was a dome light for the sheriff to put on top of his car as a warning. I pointed. Do you ever use that? Not often enough, he said. Love it when I can. Got your cell phone? I held it up. All right then, said the sheriff. All right then, I repeated. Are you making fun of me? He asked. I guess so, Sheriff Rudolph. You can drop the sheriff and the Rudolph, he added. What should I call you? Sheriff Rudolph shook his head. My mother called me Rudy Booty. We laughed together. I thought for a moment. Could I call you Bud? I asked her. He grinned. Yes, that's what Ella called me. Whoever can tell why mothers do what they do, naming me Rudolph, Rudolph. Yes, mothers are my mystery, said I sighed. He started the car and looked sideways at me. He drove down the dirt road between the meadows. Surely not your mother, he said. She could be famous, I said softly. He looked at me again and turned the corner until we came to stop by the meadow fence. He rolled down the window. She's famous to me, he said. He was looking out the window, watching my mother feed the chickens. She was singing, and the chickens were wildly eating. The magic flute, I said, sounding like my father. Sometimes when I drive by here and she's just singing to the animals, I stop to listen. You do? He nodded and peered at me with a very serious face. Your mother brings me great joy, he said. My heart seemed to jump a little. He turned and looked back across the field. We didn't speak for a while, and then I said something I hoped wouldn't insult him. You are pretty poetic for someone who can spell, I said. I am, he said with a small smile, still watching my mother. Hearing her voice float over the prairie grasses. Great joy, he repeated in a soft voice, and we drove off, not speaking. But Bud and I drove off for 3 days. Getting to know each other, we crossed the small country bridges over running streams, keeping watch over meadows, and driving on some dirt roads I'd never seen before. Surprises! I was startled at the thought. I hadn't thought there would be surprise in my small town. I like driving with the bird. He talked sometimes, telling me about the town's people I didn't know, but he was quiet too. He looked out his window and I looked out mine. He turned up a hillside road. I don't come up here too often, he said. Do you ride your horse up here ever? I took my head. Nope. Molly doesn't like going up hills and she doesn't like coming down either. Me neither, said Bud. I looked to see if he was smiling and he was. Wait, stop, I said, sitting up straighter to look past Buddy. Bud stopped and picked up his binoculars. That's all the Tinker tips in his long underwear, said Bud. I opened my door and got out. Behind him, I yelled, running to fence, climbing over. The sheep in meadow scattered. Make noise, I yelled at Bud. An animal behind him is stalking him. I ran toward the tall Tinker in his long underwear. Behind me, Bud put the dome on the roof of the car and turned on his siren. The noise blasted over us all. The sheep raced after each other, trying to hide from the loud noise. I waved my arms at Tinker, but he walked on, not looking at me. As I got closer, Tinker looked over at me. Behind him, a coyote, low to the ground, turned and ran off into the wood. Bud ran after the siren and drove the car down the driveway. Hello, said Tinker, looking thoughtful. Do I know you? I caught my breath. His eyes were the brightest blue. I'm Sylvia Bloom, I said. A coyote was right behind you. Tinker smiled a bit. He often follows me. He said he pretended to stalk. He looked more closely at me. The Sylvia Bloom who wrote the log? He asked suddenly. I nodded. You are good, he said. We began walking toward Bill's car in the dirt driveway. There was a small cabin there and a porch with chairs. Was that you making that noise? Tinker asked Sylvia. Was trying to save you from that coyote, said Bud. You mean Bunny? Asked Tinker. I told Sylvia he often followed me. At night he sleeps on the porch. I found him as a pup. Bud nodded. Come in, said Tinker, waving his arm as he walked up the steps. Bud waved his arm, imitating Tinker. As we walked up steps and into Tinker's house, there was a desk under a window with papers, pens, and an old typewriter. There were paintings on the walls. There was a small round duck bed next to the fireplace. Tinker saw me looking at it. That where Bernie sleeps in the cold of winter, he said. In the cold of winter, I had never heard that phrase. Bert looked at me. Tinker or reader, he said, as if that explained both the coyote bed and in the cold of winter, he observes life and sometimes write about it in his journal. Like us, I said. Like you, said Bud and Tinker at the same time. I walked to the wall where there was a pinned up reading pages. Bird song ends at dusk. Sun falls down into still night. Barn owl wakes to hunt. That's a Hanukkah, I said. It is, said Tinker happily. I knew you were good. Back in the car, Bert said, I don't think we should report anything about Tinker having a friendly coyote, or that he was wandering a bit in his underwear. I smiled. No, but I think I'll write a Hanukkah for him in my love. Bud looked over at me. He sighed. What's the Hanukkah? He asked. You will see. Just remember, it is 575 syllables. Bud sighed again. Okay, 575 words. Syllables. It is an ancient Japanese form, like Tinker's Hanukkah on the wall. It is very often about nature. 575, said Bud again. You can ask Mrs. Rudolph about Hanukkah. She knows everything I said. I don't need her, said Bud, grinning. I've got you. We are birds. That's short for birdies. We are birds. We drove down the hill and up and down roads. We passed the school where we found three young boys crouched over a pile of sticks. Fire, said Bud, coming to a stop. Bud gave them a lecture and made them put out the fire before the wind spread it. Are we going to jail? Asked one boy, tears at the corner of his eyes. I don't put boys in jail, said Bud. I tell their parents. Tears fell down the boy's face. But not this time, said Bud. I'm sure you will not build fires by yourselves again. The boys nodded. Go on home now, said Buddy kindly. The boys ran off, not smiling or talking. Alrighty then, said Bertie as we got in the car. The boys are more afraid of their parents than jail, I said to Bertie as we drove away. My thought exactly, said Bert. All right then, I said. All right then, said Bert. We passed the Elmore's scarecrow field where the crowds were back. Just like your father said Bert. Yep, my father knows about crowds. One day he's going to tell me all their secrets when we were on the road to my horse. Between two meadows. Bud stopped the car and rolled down his window. My mother was in the middle, feeding the sheep. The sun was low in the sky. The sheep had gathered around my mother. She sang, Casta diva, slow and serene. Her voice coming to us with the wind. She sang that once on stage in London, I said, and she sings it for us, said Buddy. I frowned at him and he caught me at it. Maybe one day you will know why, he said. Know what? I said crossly. It's your job to find out what, said Buddy. He taped me. He tapped me on the arm and I couldn't be cross anymore. It was the end of our day. We saved the little boys from jail and from their parents. We saw the crowds were back in Elmore's cornfield. I met a reader who observed life. Sheriff Rudolph and I were buds, and I still didn't understand my mother. Three Harkus, sheep in the middle, blue-eyed man and a sweet friend, a good day of peace, Sylvia Bloom. Boys too young to say, build a fire on windswept day, sent home, ponder did, Sylvia Bloom. Wily crowd of crowds back to plunder Elmer's corn. Maybe try swing song, Sylvia Bloom. 6. Hauku. Bud had gone off to a day-long sheriff's meeting. I was surprised to see him arrive at our house with Mrs. Rudolph sitting in the passenger seat. It was early morning. My mother was hanging sheets on the clothesline. My father came out of the barn with a net, but burst out of the car. Sylvia, would you believe that the townspeople are singing at Elmer's cornfield, and there is a trumpet and a violin full to come. It comes, you are not only reporting news, you are also making news. The crows will be back, said my father. Jack was a crow in his past life, said my mother with a grin. Mrs. Rudolph gave me a hug, and I realized that I missed her this summer. I miss you too, she said, as if she'd read my thoughts. Sylvia didn't say she missed you, said Bert. She was thinking it, said Mrs. Rudolph. I added, she knows. Mrs. Rudolph did that, reading the thought of her students and all the parents of all the little boys were calling me this morning and find out if their boy started the fire. Bud said, thankful. All three gave themselves up. He handed me the newspaper, and you wrote 3 haikus, he said. And believe it or not, Duty Lula tried to write a parking ticket in haiku. I couldn't believe that. I was in class with Lula's son, Hank, who tried everything, both good and bad, and most times succeeded. Mrs. Rudolph touch the bird's arm. Show her, she said. Bud reached in his pocket and took out a folded paper. He handed it to me. It was a handwriting. How cool. But you wrote this? Bud shrugged. I just did what you said. I read it out loud. Birds fly down to here, here. Sweet song for both sheep and men. She sings to bring joy. Mrs. Rudolph beamed. This is about you. I said to my mother, it's about all of us, said Bert. It's about me, said Nate, suddenly leaning against the wall. My father reached out and smoothed his rumpled hair. I didn't say anything. I was afraid to speak about what I didn't understand except for one thing. Your haiku is better than mine, I said softly. I handed it back to him. Bert shook his head. You keep it, Sylvia. I wrote it for you. 7. Blue eyes, yellow eyes. I rode Molly today. I knew where I was going, and I left early before it came too warm for Molly. There was no wind, and I could already feel the sun's hot heat. We rode along the road, my mother singing, of course, the music from the magic flute to the crazy chickens. I realized that I was just smiling and I didn't know why. I put my hand in my pocket and found Buzz folded up. How cool they are. Molly liked being out the road. She tossed her head and began to trot. I turned her up the hill where she'd never been before. She didn't mind. We rode up the hill, past trees and clearings, hearing the songs of birds. Molly tossed her head again, and then, past the field of 4 sheep, we came to Tinker's cabin. Tinker was on the porch reading a book. I slid down off Molly and looped her reins over a low tree branch in the shade. Tinker looked up and called to me, Sylvia Bloom, the writer of Haucus. Tinker walked down the steps and filled the pail with fresh water. Good morning, Tinker. Tinker carried the pail over the Molly. She nodded his neck, making him smile. Molly's thanking you. Thanking you, I said. She's welcome, said Tinker. His eyes were sharp and steady, and blue I had no name for. I sat on the top step and leaned against the porch post. Tinker sat in his chair, his long legs stretched out. It was good the sheriff hired you. It was a wise choice. I like Bud, and I'm finding out a lot more about where I live. What's happening? Sometimes surprising things, surprising people like you. I was looking out at the meadow, the and Molly in the shade, and said Tinker in a hushed voice. If you turn your head very slowly toward me, you will see something else surprising. Slowly, remember, I slowly turned my head and looked into the very close yellow eyes of Tinker Coyote. I held my breath as Bunny stared at me for a long time. Then he said, there were black spots like marbles on the middle of the yellow. He was so close. Ah, Bunny likes you, said Tinker. I knew he would. You can talk, Sylvia, but I wouldn't touch him yet. That will come later on your next visit. Later, on my next visit, I could feel my heart beating. Bunny, I said softly. Bunny's ear went up, but he didn't move. He sat and watched. I smiled. You are beautiful, Bunny. He tilted his head as if considering this compliment. The three of us sat on the porch for a long time. Bunny, Tinker, and I. My mother was a famous opera singer, I said suddenly, before I could stop myself. Tinker did not look surprised. He nodded. I know that. I once heard her sing with James Garrison in London. Really? Really, said Tinker. I was a world traveler earlier in my life. Your mother has a stunningly beautiful voice. I took a breath. James Grayson is coming to the city to perform, I said. He has a beautiful voice too, said Tinker. Why do you think she doesn't sing on stage anymore? Tinker turned to look at me. Perhaps it wasn't enough for her, he said. What more could there be? I asked.